When a struggling rancher discovers an injured horse with mysterious markings in his drought-stricken field, he never imagined it would change his life forever. As he works to save the magnificent creature, its inexplicable healing abilities begin to transform not just his failing ranch, but every animal it encounters. But when equine geneticists finally uncover its true origins, the astonishing revelation doesn't just rescue his family's legacy, it revolutionizes our understanding of horse evolution and therapeutic healing worldwide. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe in the healing power of animals, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow we have another amazing story that will touch your heart. Deep in the heart of Montana's Paradise Valley, where generations of ranchers had raised horses against the backdrop of the Absaroka Mountains, Tom Reeves stood frozen at the edge of his parched pasture, staring at something that defied explanation. The severe drought that had plagued the region had driven him to check his far fields for any remaining patches of grass, but what he discovered would challenge everything he thought he knew about equine evolution and natural healing. The horse before him was unlike any he'd ever encountered in his 30 years of breeding and training therapy horses. Its coat seemed to shift colors in the morning light, displaying intricate patterns that appeared to pulse with life. This wasn't just another wild Mustang that had wandered onto his property. This was something entirely different. The animal's leg was clearly injured, yet it moved with an otherworldly grace, its eyes displaying an intelligence that made Tom's heart race. The morning had started like any other at Silver Creek Ranch. Tom had risen before dawn, troubled by the increasingly dire situation facing his family's therapeutic riding center. The drought had devastated their hayfields, forcing them to buy expensive feed from out of state. 3 of their best therapy horses had fallen ill with a mysterious condition that baffled local veterinarians, and their insurance wouldn't cover the mounting medical bills. Tom's mind wandered to the letter from the bank that sat unopened on his kitchen table. He knew what it contained, another warning about their overdue mortgage payments. The ranch that his grandfather had founded in 1932 as a cavalry horse training facility, and that his father had transformed into one of Montana's premier equine therapy centers, was slipping through his fingers. The ranch's reputation had once drawn families from across the country, seeking help for children with physical disabilities and emotional trauma. Their unique approach to therapeutic riding, combined with the natural healing energy of the mountain valley, had produced results that amazed even experienced therapists. But now, with their best horses sick and their resources dwindling, they could barely maintain their program for local families. Sarah, his wife, and the ranch's head therapist had been working double shifts at the local veterinary clinic to help make ends meet. Their daughter Emma, who had inherited her mother's gift for connecting with troubled horses, had postponed her equine studies scholarship to help save the ranch. The weight of their sacrifices pressed heavily on Tom's shoulders as he made his morning rounds. That's when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong in these drought-stricken fields. It was like a soft humming, almost musical, mixing with the morning breeze. Following the sound, he'd crossed the dry creek bed that gave the ranch its name, heading toward the far pasture that bordered the national forest. The noise grew stronger, accompanied by what seemed like a gentle pulsing light in the early morning mist. As Tom approached, he noticed something else unusual. The grass in this section of the field was somehow still green, despite the drought that had turned the rest of the valley brown. The air felt different too, charged with an energy he couldn't explain, reminiscent of the atmosphere just before a mountain thunderstorm. The injured horse stood in the center of this inexplicably vibrant patch of grass. Its coat seemed to contain every color he'd ever seen in a horse, yet none that he could definitively name. The patterns that moved across its hide reminded him of the northern lights he'd seen on a trip to Alaska. fluid, ethereal, and somehow alive. Despite its injured leg, the animal carried itself with remarkable dignity, its posture suggesting both strength and vulnerability. What captured Tom's attention most was the horse's eyes. In 3 decades of working with horses, he'd learned to read their emotions, to understand their personalities through their gazes. But these eyes held something he'd never seen before. An awareness that seemed almost human, yet somehow more than human. The horse was studying him with equal curiosity, its ears forward, its presence radiating a calm that seemed to penetrate the very air around them. Drawing on years of experience with injured horses, Tom began to slowly approach, speaking softly and maintaining eye contact. The horse made no move to flee, instead turning slightly to better observe him. As he got closer, Tom could see that the injury to its leg should have been causing significant distress, yet the animal showed no signs of pain. More surprisingly, he could have sworn he saw traces of that same ethereal light moving beneath its skin, concentrating around the wounded area. As the sun rose higher over the Absaroka Mountains, Tom faced a decision that would change not just his life, but our understanding of healing itself. Should he call for help immediately, knowing that bringing others in might spook this extraordinary creature? Or should he first try to understand what he was dealing with, aware that such a choice could either doom or save everything he held dear? Thomas Reeves' connection to Silver Creek Ranch ran as deep as the mountain springs that once fed its verdant pastures. For 4 generations, the Reeves family had worked this challenging terrain, transforming a modest horse training operation into one of Montana's most respected equine therapy centers. Their 400-acre property, nestled against the Absaroka Mountains, had been a beacon of hope for families seeking alternative healing since his father first introduced therapeutic riding programs in 1985. But lately, that proud legacy was slipping away like water in the drought-stricken creek. At 42, Tom's weathered face and the worry lines around his eyes told the story of someone who had traded a promising career in veterinary medicine for the grueling demands of running a therapeutic ranch. 7 years ago, he had been completing his specialization in equine rehabilitation at Colorado State University, developing innovative treatments for traumatized horses. Now he spent his nights poring over bankruptcy paperwork, trying to figure out how to keep the ranch from closing its gates forever. The transformation of Thomas Reeves, DVM candidate, into Tom Reeves, struggling ranch owner, hadn't been part of his plan. Growing up, he'd loved working with the therapy horses, but dreamed of advancing the field through research and clinical practice. His father, James Reeves, had supported his academic pursuits, proud to have a veterinarian in the family. Understanding, "The science makes you a better healer," he'd always said, encouraging Tom to pursue his studies while keeping his connection to Silver Creek alive. Just 5 years ago, the ranch had been thriving. His father's innovative therapy programs had developed techniques particularly effective for children with autism and PTSD, and their success rates drew clients from across the country. The Reeves method, as it had become known in therapeutic riding circles, was famous for achieving breakthroughs where traditional therapies had failed. Graduate students would visit to learn about their unique approach to equine-assisted healing, and the ranch's income had been enough to support 3 families comfortably. But then everything changed. His father's sudden stroke had forced Tom to leave his doctoral program and take over the ranch. The transition had been brutal. Despite his medical background, managing a therapy center required a different set of skills than conducting research. The learning curve had been steep, and expensive mistakes were made in those early months. Then the real troubles began. A mysterious illness had swept through their prize therapy horses last winter, affecting their usually calm temperaments and making them unsuitable for working with children. The veterinarians were baffled, finding no clear cause for the horses' declining health. Tom had watched helplessly as their client list dwindled while operating costs continued to mount. He'd employed every bit of his medical training to analyze the problem, running tests on the water supply, soil samples, and feed quality, but found nothing conclusive. Nothing. He'd been forced to lay off most of their specialized therapy staff, trusted professionals who had been with the family for years. The decision had torn at his heart, but with bank payments looming and medical bills eating into their reserves, he'd had no choice. Now it was just him, Sarah, Emma, and old Miguel Rodriguez, who'd worked as their head trainer for 25 years and refused to abandon the ranch, despite Tom's inability to pay him full wages. The local community had watched Silver Creek's decline with growing concern. The Reeves name meant something in Paradise Valley. His grandfather had helped establish the region's first therapeutic riding program, and his father had served on the state's Equine Therapy Advisory Board. Their ranch had always been a cornerstone of local healthcare, providing services to veterans groups and children's hospitals throughout Montana. Last week, Margaret Whitman, the regional bank manager who handled their loans, had called Tom in for a meeting. The conversation still echoed. In his mind, "Tom, you've got until the end of the quarter to get current on your payments. I've pushed this as far as I can with the board, but if something doesn't change..." The unfinished sentence had hung in the air like the morning mist that now shrouded his pasture. 3 more months. That's all he had to save 4 generations. Of Reeves' history, Tom had tried everything he could think of. He'd applied for healthcare grants, consulted with university programs, and even considered converting entirely to a research facility in hopes of securing institutional funding. But each potential solution required time or capital he didn't have, and the bank's deadline loomed ever closer. His father's life insurance had helped cover some of the initial losses, but that cushion was long gone. The appearance of the mysterious horse couldn't have come at a more critical time. The remaining therapy horses seemed stressed, showing signs of anxiety that no amount of care seemed to solve. He couldn't afford any more setbacks, especially not with an unknown horse that could be carrying diseases. That's what should have been going through his mind as he stood in that vibrant patch of grass, watching the strange patterns play across the animal's coat. But something deeper, perhaps the same intuition that had made his family such successful healers, told him this was different. Though he didn't yet understand what he was looking at or what it might mean, his medical training combined with generations of horse-whispering instincts told him this discovery could change everything. As the horse's unusual markings continued to shift and flow in the morning light, Tom's mind raced with possibilities. Could this mysterious animal be the miracle Silver Creek needed? Or would trying to help it be the final mistake that ended their legacy of healing? The horse's intelligent eyes seemed to study him as if it understood his dilemma, its presence radiating a calm that somehow made the weight of his decisions feel lighter. As the injured horse continued its graceful movements through the verdant patch of grass, Tom's veterinary training kicked in, overriding his initial amazement. He reached slowly for his phone, not to call for help, but to document what he was seeing. Years of clinical research had taught him the importance of thorough documentation, and whatever this animal was, it deserved proper medical observation. His hands trembled slightly as he activated his phone's camera, but the horse showed no sign of distress at the device's presence. If anything, it seemed to respond to him with increased interest, its mysterious coat patterns shifting more rapidly as he approached. Tom began recording, falling naturally into the familiar cadence of clinical observation. Subject appears to be a stallion, approximately 16 hands high, he whispered, maintaining a calm, professional tone despite his racing heart. Coat displays unprecedented color-changing abilities with fluid patterns reminiscent of Aurora Borealis. The specimen demonstrates what appears to be conscious control over these changes, suggesting unprecedented neural control overpigmentation. Most remarkably, despite a severe injury to the left hind leg, the animal shows minimal signs of distress. As he recorded, Tom noticed something extraordinary. The horse's color patterns weren't random. They seemed to form complex geometric shapes that reminded him of the mathematical patterns he'd studied in veterinary school, the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio. But these patterns were dynamic, shifting and flowing with a purpose he couldn't yet understand. Most intriguing was the horse's apparent interest in its surroundings. While any normal horse with such an injury would be displaying clear signs of pain and distress, this one moved with deliberate purpose, its attention particularly focused on the dry, struggling grass beyond the mysterious green patch where it stood. Tom's attention was drawn to the injury itself, a deep gash that should have been causing significant pain and lameness. But as he watched, something impossible seemed to be happening. The same ethereal patterns that moved across the horse's coat appeared to concentrate around the wound, creating a subtle luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with what he assumed was the animal's heartbeat. What happened next made Tom nearly drop his phone. The horse extended its injured leg, planting it firmly on the ground, and where its hoof touched the parched earth, the grass began to revive. The effect spread outward in a circular pattern, turning brown vegetation green again, as if life itself was flowing from the animal into the drought-stricken soil. "This is impossible," Tom muttered, moving closer to observe. His scientific mind raced to make sense of what he was seeing. Was this some form of rapid botanical regeneration, a biological interaction unlike anything previously documented? He needed more equipment, more ways to measure and record what was happening. Making a quick decision, Tom hurried to his truck, where he kept his veterinary field kit. He returned with a digital thermometer, his old research notebook, and various diagnostic tools he'd held onto from his university days. The horse remained in place, seeming to watch his preparations with intelligent interest. Temperature readings showed the animal's body heat was slightly elevated, but nothing dangerous. What stunned Tom was the infrared reading of the revived grass. It showed signs of cellular activity that should have taken weeks to develop. Somehow, this horse wasn't just making the grass look healthier, it was actually accelerating natural growth processes. As he documented these observations, Tom's mind wandered to the implications. If this animal could interact with plant life in such a way, what did that mean for biological science? More immediately, could this explain the mysterious green patch in his otherwise drought-ravaged field? The horse suddenly raised its head, ears pricked forward, staring intently toward the ranch buildings. Tom checked his watch and realized he'd been observing the creature for over 2 hours. Miguel would be arriving soon for the morning feeding, and Tom needed to make a decision about how to proceed. His veterinary background told him he should contact his old research colleagues immediately. This discovery could revolutionize their understanding of biological regeneration and healing. The horse's apparent ability to influence plant life alone could have massive implications for agricultural science, not to mention the potential applications for equine therapy. But another part of him, the part that had watched his father work, miracles with troubled horses and traumatized children, urged caution. This horse had chosen his ranch, his field, for some reason. It seemed to be helping, not hurting, and there was something about its intelligent gaze that suggested it had purpose in its actions. Looking at his phone, Tom saw 3 missed calls from Sarah. His wife would be starting the morning therapy session soon, and he needed to decide whether to share this discovery with her. Sarah was not only his partner, but also the ranch's most gifted therapist. Her intuitive understanding of horses had often proved more valuable than his scientific knowledge. The horse made the decision for him. As the sound of Miguel's old truck approached in the distance, it moved deliberately toward a cluster of trees at the field's edge, its coat pattern shifting to match the dappled shadows. It seemed to settle into the space between two ancient pines, maintaining its mysterious presence while becoming almost invisible to casual observation. Tom quickly gathered his equipment, mind already formulating a research plan, drawing on his scientific training to create a framework for studying this unprecedented situation. Moving some branches to better conceal the horse's location, he spoke softly to it. "I don't know what you are, but I'm going to protect you. I need time to understand what's happening here." The horse's patterns shifted in response, creating a ripple of colors that seemed almost like a nod of acknowledgement. As he heard Miguel's truck pulling up to the barn, Tom took one last look at his extraordinary discovery. In just a few hours, his world had shifted on its axis. The ranch that had been a symbol of his failing legacy now housed what might be the most significant scientific discovery in the history of equine research. The question was, could he handle this responsibility alone, or would trying to keep this secret prove to be his biggest mistake? The next 3 days became an intricate dance of secrecy and scientific observation. Each morning Tom would rise. Before dawn, his heart racing as he made his way to the hidden grove, half afraid he'd find the mysterious horse gone or discovered by someone else. But each morning it was there, continuing its inexplicable work with the surrounding environment in ways that both fascinated and baffled him. His old research skills came flooding back as he established a makeshift field laboratory in his truck. He'd retrieved his microscope and testing equipment from storage, along with other tools he'd kept from his veterinary research days. The horse seemed to accept his presence and his instruments, sometimes even appearing to pose for his camera or adjust its position when he was taking measurements. The most extraordinary development came on the second morning when Tom checked. On the patch of grass where the horse had first appeared, the transformation was remarkable. Not only had the grass fully regenerated, but it seemed to possess qualities he'd never seen before. The blades were more vibrant, more resilient, and seemed to be spreading their vitality to the surrounding vegetation. Field Observation Day 2. Tom spoke into his digital recorder, examining a blade of grass under his portable microscope. The grass contains unprecedented levels of chlorophyll and cellular structure. The rate of photosynthesis appears to be 3 times normal levels. There's some kind of biological enhancement occurring that defies everything we know about plant regeneration. What fascinated Tom most was the horse's apparent intelligence and purpose. It wasn't randomly healing the landscape. It seemed to be systematically working through the drought-stricken areas, spending more time in the most damaged sections. The soft humming sounds it produced appeared to be a form of communication, with different tones for different activities. Keeping the secret from Miguel proved more challenging than he'd anticipated. The old trainer had worked with horses too long not to notice the sudden improvements in the pasture. "Never seen anything like it," he'd commented that morning, checking the grass in what had been their driest field. "It's like the land found some kind of miracle cure." Tom had mumbled something about testing a new organic fertilizer, but he could tell Miguel wasn't entirely convinced. His weathered face had creased with concern as he studied the reviving grass, particularly when a mysterious humming sound had echoed across the field. The implications of the horse's presence were already becoming apparent. In just 3 days, patches of their drought-stricken land had begun to recover. The mysterious illness affecting their therapy horses seemed to be improving, though Tom hadn't yet allowed the mysterious horse direct contact with them. Something about the regenerated grass appeared to be having a healing effect on every animal that grazed on it. But it was on the evening of the 3rd day that Tom made a discovery that truly shook his understanding of what he was dealing with. He'd been reviewing footage from the small trail camera he'd hidden in the grove when he noticed something extraordinary. Late at night, when the area was empty except for the mysterious horse, its coat patterns would create complex geometric displays that seemed to pulse with their own light. "These aren't random patterns," Tom muttered, watching the footage for the third time. The designs resembled DNA helixes, cellular structures, and what looked like complex molecular bonds. The horse wasn't just communicating, it was trying to share information. Each night, the patterns grew more complex. Tom began mapping them, drawing on his medical training to identify recurring symbols and sequences. He found himself wishing he'd paid more attention in his advanced genetics courses. He had a growing suspicion that he was looking at something far more extraordinary than a unique horse breed. The pressure of maintaining his secret was starting to wear on him. That afternoon, he'd had to turn away a local veterinarian who had shown unexpected interest in the recovering pastures. The State Agricultural Extension Office had called twice, curious about reports of drought-resistant grass appearing on his property. Each inquiry required careful deflection, and Tom found himself constructing an increasingly complex web of half-truths. His isolation was taking its toll. There were so many questions he needed to discuss with other researchers, so many tests he couldn't perform with his limited field equipment. The horse's apparent ability to accelerate healing and regeneration could have massive implications for veterinary medicine, agriculture, and their therapy programs. But every time he considered reaching out to his old colleagues, he remembered how the scientific community typically responded to unusual discoveries, with immediate quarantine, endless tests, and little regard for the larger implications. Late, on the third night, Tom sat in his truck, watching the horse work with another section of damaged pasture. Its coat patterns had taken on a gentle, almost therapeutic quality as it moved through the field. The sight reminded him of his father, how he'd always said that the key to healing was understanding and working with nature, not trying to control. "I wish you could tell me exactly what you are," he said softly to the horse. To his amazement, it turned toward him and began creating a new pattern of shifting colors, more intricate than any he'd seen before. The display showed what looked like a map of mountain ranges, but with strange markings at specific points along the ridgelines. One of those points seemed to correspond exactly with the location of Silver Creek Ranch. Tom's hands shook as he sketched the pattern in his notebook. This wasn't random. This was deliberate communication. The horse wasn't just some unique mutation. It appeared to be part of something larger, something planned. But before he could process the implications of this revelation, he heard the crunch of tires on gravel nearby. His heart stopped as he recognized the sound of Sarah's SUV. She wasn't supposed to be back from her evening therapy session at the Veterans Center for another hour. The horse's patterns dimmed slightly but didn't disappear completely, and Tom could hear footsteps approaching through the grass. He had seconds to decide, try to hide everything, or finally let someone else in on his extraordinary secret. Sarah's footsteps drew closer through the tall grass, and Tom's heart hammered in his chest as his wife's familiar silhouette appeared in the twilight. The horse's shifting patterns cast an ethereal glow across the field, illuminating Sarah's face as she stopped abruptly, her eyes widening at the impossible sight before her. There was no time to hide it, no way to explain away the extraordinary scene unfolding in their back pasture. "Tom," Sarah whispered, her therapist's composure momentarily shaken. Her hand reached out to steady herself against a fence post as she took in the mysterious horse, its coat rippling with colors that shouldn't exist in nature. "What in God's name have you been hiding out here?" The horse, rather than retreating, seemed to study Sarah with intense interest. Its color patterns shifted to a softer, almost welcoming display, and it released one of its musical humming tones, a sound that made Sarah gasp. To Tom's surprise, his wife didn't run or shout. Instead, she slowly approached, her 20 years of experience with troubled horses evident in her careful movements. "This is why the pastures are recovering," she said softly, her trained eye taking in every detail. I knew something wasn't right about that fertilizer story. Been working with horses my whole life, never seen anything like this. She turned to Tom, her expression a mix of wonder and concern. How long? Tom felt a wave of relief wash over him. Perhaps sharing this burden wouldn't be the disaster he'd feared. 4 days, he answered, watching as the horse created another complex pattern of shifting colors on its flank. It's been healing the land, Sarah, not just healing it, enhancing it. The grass, the soil, everything it touches becomes better than it was before. Over the next hour, Tom showed Sarah everything. He documented the horse's regenerative abilities, the mysterious patterns, the transformed vegetation. His wife absorbed it all with remarkable calm, asking surprisingly insightful questions that made Tom realize he'd underestimated how much her therapy work had taught her about animal behavior and healing. Your father always said nature had more, a healing power than we understood, Sarah mused, watching the horse interact with another patch of drought-damaged grass. Guess he never figured something like this would show up in our own backyard. She paused, then added, But Tom, we've got bigger problems than keeping this secret. Word's starting to spread about our miracle recovery. Sarah explained that the local ranching community had noticed the sudden changes at Silver Creek. The feed supplier had commented on their reduced orders. The therapy clients had remarked on the improved conditions of the pastures. Even the bank had called, curious about the sudden uptick in their scheduled therapy sessions as their horses seemed to be recovering from their mysterious illness. And that's not all, Sarah continued, pulling out her phone. Look at this. She showed him a local farming forum where people were discussing Silver Creek Ranch's mysterious transformation. Someone had posted photos of their fields at night, capturing a faint, unusual glow. The thread was filled with speculation about secret government experiments and new agricultural technologies. Tom's stomach churned as he scrolled through the comments. Their secret was already slipping away, one curious observation at a time. The horse, seeming to sense their distress, moved closer and created a series of calming patterns that rippled through the air. We need a plan, Sarah said firmly. Can't keep this under wraps much longer, and we need to protect both the ranch and... She gestured at the horse. Our friend here, whatever it is, it chose us for a reason. As if in response to Sarah's words, the horse began creating its most complex display yet. The patterns on its coat shifted to show what appeared to be mountain ranges, valleys, and what looked like ancient migration routes. Tom gasped as he recognized landmarks from the surrounding Absaroka Mountains. It's trying to tell us something, Tom breathed, quickly sketching the patterns in his notebook. These locations, they're all connected to the old mountain routes. But why show us now? Their discussion was interrupted by the sound of multiple vehicles approaching the ranch. Tom's heart sank as he recognized Miguel's truck among them, along with what sounded like several others. The unusual activity in their back pasture must have attracted attention. The old mine entrance, Sarah said quickly, already moving to guide the horse. Take him through the back trail to the abandoned mine entrance. I'll handle whoever's coming. Her experience managing crisis situations with therapy horses was evident in her calm efficiency. As Tom led the horse toward safety, he could hear Sarah's voice carrying across the yard, spinning a tale about testing new, drought-resistant grass species. The horse moved with him willingly, its patterns dimmed to near invisibility, but Tom noticed it was creating a new sequence of colors as they walked, one that seemed to pulse with urgency. In the relative safety of the old mine entrance, Tom studied the horse's latest display. The pattern showed a clear progression, more points of light appearing along the mountain ranges, spreading through valleys, connecting in a complex network. With sudden clarity, he realized what he was seeing. This wasn't just about their ranch. This was the beginning of something much larger. His phone buzzed, a text from Margaret Whitman at the bank. "Tom, we need to talk about the extraordinary changes at Silver Creek. I'm coming out first thing tomorrow morning. This kind of turnaround requires explanation." Above ground, he could hear more vehicles arriving. Sarah's voice was joined by others, curious neighbors, local ranchers, all drawn by the rumors of Silver Creek's mysterious transformation. The horse's patterns pulsed in a sequence that seemed almost apologetic, but its continued communications suggested it had no intention of leaving. Tom realized they were reaching a tipping point. The secret was unraveling faster than they could control, and decisions would soon be forced upon them if they didn't act first. As he stood in the old mine entrance with this extraordinary being, watching its colors dance across the rock walls, he knew the time for hiding was coming to an end. What he didn't know was that events were already in motion that would transform their private discovery into a revelation that would shake the foundations of veterinary science and change our understanding of healing forever. The crisis struck with stunning suddenness on a bright Thursday morning. Tom had just finished relocating the horse back to the hidden grove after its night in the mine entrance when he noticed 3 unfamiliar vehicles parked at the ranch's main gate. His heart nearly stopped when he recognized the logo on one of them, the National Equine Research Institute. As he approached, he could hear Sarah's voice carrying across the morning air, trying to deflect the visitors' questions. But it wasn't just the research scientists who had arrived. A local news crew was setting up their equipment, and a sleek government vehicle had pulled up behind them. "Mr. Reeves," called out Dr. Rachel Chen, a leading equine geneticist whose work Tom had studied during his veterinary training. "We've received some very interesting data about unusual biological activity and unexplained healing phenomena at your ranch. We'd like to discuss what's happening here." Before Tom could respond, a familiar musical humming echoed from the direction of the grove, louder than ever before. He watched in horror as all activity in the yard ceased, everyone's attention drawn to the sound. Dr. Chen's eyes widened, her hand already reaching for her equipment. "That's impossible," the scientist whispered. "That frequency, it matches recordings we've captured from ancient petroglyph sites in the mountains. But the complexity—" She was already striding toward the grove, her team following with monitoring equipment. "This is private property," Tom called out, trying to maintain control of the situation. But he could see it slipping away as more vehicles arrived, local ranchers, additional media, and what looked like government officials. His phone buzzed continuously. Margaret Whitman from the bank, the therapy center's board members, agricultural authorities. In the grove, the horse had begun creating its most spectacular display yet. The entire area was filled with shifting patterns that seemed to map not just the local mountain ranges, but entire ancient migration routes. The sophistication of the display made it clear that this was no ordinary mutation. This was something far more extraordinary. Dr. Chen's equipment was going haywire, emitting a cascade of alerts and readings. "These genetic markers," she exclaimed, "they're identical to anomalies we've been tracking in ancient equine DNA samples. But we've never seen anything this pure, this active." She turned to Tom, her professional demeanor cracking with excitement. "How long has this been here? What else have you observed?" Tom felt the weight of dozens of eyes on him. Sarah stood by his side, her steady presence offering silent support as he faced the moment he'd been dreading. But before he could respond, the horse made the decision for them. The musical tones shifted to a new frequency that seemed to vibrate through everyone's chest. The color patterns transformed, showing what appeared to be ancient cave paintings, and not natural formations, but clearly designed and preserved with purpose. The grove filled with gasps as the implications became clear to everyone present. "It's not just one unique horse," Tom finally said, his scientific training taking over. As he began to explain, "It's a messenger. These patterns it's showing us, they're not just displays, they're a history. There's an entire lineage of these beings preserved in the mountains, reaching out to us. The horse's patterns pulsed in what seemed like approval, as Tom continued to share everything he'd learned over the past days. He explained about the healing of the land, the enhanced grass growth, the complex communications he'd been documenting. With each revelation, Dr. Chen's expression shifted, from skepticism to wonder. "The petroglyphs," she muttered, rapidly typing notes into her tablet. "The unusual genetic markers we've been finding in mountain caves. It all connects. They've been here all along, haven't we? We just weren't looking in the right way." The government officials had begun making urgent phone calls, and Tom could hear phrases like protected species status and national heritage site being thrown around. The news crew was broadcasting live, their reporter struggling to maintain composure as she described the scene unfolding at what had been a struggling therapy ranch. But it was Margaret Whitman from the bank who asked the question that brought everything into focus. The loan officer had arrived in the midst of the chaos and now stood staring at the horse with a mixture of awe and practical curiosity. "Is this why the ranch's land has been regenerating? Have they been helping you?" Tom nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders as he finally spoke the full truth. "They're not just helping the ranch. They're showing us a better way to work with nature, to heal and enhance rather than just survive. This isn't about saving one therapy center. It's about transforming our understanding of natural healing itself." The horse's patterns shifted again, and new displays began to appear throughout the grove. These showed similar locations, similar points of contact all along the mountain range. Silver Creek hadn't been chosen randomly. It was part of a larger plan, a careful first step in revealing a hidden lineage that had existed alongside humanity for millennia. As government scientists began setting up more sophisticated monitoring equipment and Dr. Chen's team started documenting everything they could, Tom felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. The secret was out, and there was no going back. The quiet life he'd known was over, replaced by something far more extraordinary. Sarah placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Your father would be proud," she said softly. "He always said this ranch would be part of something special." "Don't think he had this in mind, though." They shared a quiet laugh as they watched the horse continue its display, now seemingly eager to communicate with a broader audience. Tom knew that everything would change now. His ranch would become a research station, his quiet fields would fill with scientists and equipment, and his life would never be the same. But as he watched the horse sharing its knowledge with an expanding group of amazed researchers, he realized that sometimes the best thing you can do with a secret is let it change the world. Just as the chaos at Silver Creek Ranch threatened to spiral out of control, a sleek helicopter descended from the morning sky. Its arrival brought an immediate change to the increasingly chaotic scene. Government agents quickly established a perimeter, and the local media was politely but firmly moved to the ranch's entrance. A distinguished woman in her 70s emerged from the helicopter, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, her movements purposeful as she strode through the crowd. Dr. Catherine Blackwood, director of the Ancient Equine Preservation Society, was not someone who waited for introductions. She made her way directly to Tom, Dr. Chen falling quiet mid-sentence at her approach. "Mr. Reeves," Dr. Blackwood said, her voice carrying an authority that somehow cut through the commotion. "I believe you and I need to have an urgent conversation about your visitor. We've been waiting for this moment for a very long time." Before Tom could respond, the horse's musical humming filled the grove with a melody more complex than any it had produced before. Dr. Blackwood smiled slightly, turning toward the sound. "Yes, they said you would be the one to make first contact. Though I admit we expected it to be near one of the ancient cave sites, not in a therapy ranch. Tom's mind reeled. You knew. You knew they were out there? Dr. Blackwood nodded, gesturing for her team to begin setting up sophisticated monitoring equipment. We've known about their existence for decades, Mr. Reeves. What we didn't know was when they would choose to reveal themselves, or who they would choose as their intermediary. The horse's pattern shifted, creating a series of images that seemed to confirm Dr. Blackwood's words. It showed ancient cave systems, hidden valleys and sanctuaries that had existed alongside humanity for millennia, carefully observing, waiting for the right moment to make contact. They're not just one breed, Dr. Blackwood explained, as her team worked. They're a lineage of advanced equine beings that evolved in Earth's mountain regions long before humans began domesticating horses. What you've been hosting is an ambassador, one specifically chosen to initiate contact through therapeutic healing. The horse pulsed in agreement, its patterns now showing how its kind had watched humanity's development, concerned about our impact on the natural world. The choice of Silver Creek hadn't been random. They had been monitoring Tom's veterinary background, his connection to healing, and his struggle to maintain therapeutic practices. Your visitor has been demonstrating more than just healing abilities, Dr. Blackwood continued. It's been showing us a pathway to harmonious cooperation between humans and nature. The enhanced grass growth, the cellular regeneration in your fields, these are just the beginning. As if on cue, the horse began displaying new patterns, more complex than anything Tom had seen before. Dr. Chen gasped as she interpreted the data streaming across her instruments. These are complete genetic modification sequences, she exclaimed. They're not just healing the land, they're optimizing it for sustainable growth while reducing environmental stress. Dr. Blackwood's team quickly established a temporary research station in the grove, their equipment far more sophisticated than Tom's makeshift lab. The horse seemed to approve, actively participating in their measurements and tests, its color and patterns becoming more detailed and informative. There's something else, Tom said, showing Dr. Blackwood his notebooks. The patterns it showed me about other locations in the mountains. I think this is just the first contact point. The older scientist nodded. We've detected similar genetic markers at other therapeutic riding centers near ancient cave systems. Your success here, your ability to understand and protect your visitor, has proven that humanity is ready for broader contact. Sarah, who had been quietly observing everything, finally spoke up. So what happens to the ranch now? To our therapy program? Dr. Blackwood turned to face them both. Silver Creek will become our primary research and contact station, but it will remain under your control. We've learned from past mistakes. Forcing our way into these situations only drives them away. They chose you, both of you. You'll be essential to everything that follows. The horse moved closer, its patterns creating a display that seemed to embrace Tom and Sarah. The images showed Silver Creek transformed, not into a sterile research facility, but into a thriving intersection of therapeutic riding and ancient equine wisdom. The ranch would remain a working therapy center, but also serve as a communication hub with this newly revealed species. They want to teach us, Tom realized, watching the patterns unfold. Everything they know about healing, about working with nature instead of against it. This isn't just about saving one ranch. It's about transforming how we approach therapy and healing globally. Dr. Blackwood smiled. Precisely. And your background in veterinary medicine, combined with Sarah's therapeutic expertise, makes you uniquely qualified to help bridge our worlds. We'll provide all the support and resources you need, but you'll remain the primary liaisons with our new allies. As the day progressed, Tom watched his ranch transform into a sophisticated research center. But unlike the sterile laboratories he'd feared, this was something different, a harmonious blend of working therapy ranch and advanced science. The horse moved freely between the research equipment and the therapy areas, continuing its work. While sharing its knowledge, local reporters were finally allowed to film from a safe distance, their stories focusing on the therapeutic breakthrough rather than the full truth about the horse's origins. Dr. Blackwood's team knew how to manage information, allowing the world to adjust gradually to the idea of advanced equine cooperation. That evening, as the sun set over Silver Creek Ranch, Tom stood with Sarah and Dr. Blackwood, watching the horse create beautiful patterns that danced across the evening sky. The past week's secrets and fears had transformed into something he could never have imagined, a bridge between worlds, with his family's struggling therapy ranch at the center of it all. The next 7 days at Silver Creek Ranch became a whirlwind of discovery and transformation. Dr. Blackwood's team worked with remarkable efficiency, converting the old hay barn into a state-of-the-art research center while maintaining the ranch's essential character as a therapeutic riding facility. The mysterious horse, far from being disturbed by the activity, seemed to thrive on the increased interaction. Tom found himself at the center of an extraordinary collaboration. His unique combination of veterinary knowledge and therapeutic experience made him the perfect bridge between the scientific teams and their otherworldly visitor. Each day brought new revelations that challenged everything they thought they knew about equine evolution and natural healing. The genetic modifications they're introducing to the landscape are revolutionary, Dr. Chen explained during one morning briefing, displaying complex molecular diagrams on their new equipment. They're not just enhancing plant growth, they're fundamentally improving the soil's nutrient efficiency, reducing water requirements, and strengthening the entire ecosystem. It's decades ahead of our most advanced agricultural biotechnology. The horse had begun to share more detailed information about its lineage. Through increasingly sophisticated color patterns and musical communications, it revealed the existence of vast mountain sanctuaries, communities of these beings that had evolved alongside humanity while remaining hidden in remote valleys and cave systems. Their abilities had developed along entirely different lines than human science, focused on biological enhancement and harmony with natural systems rather than technological solutions. Miguel, who had initially worried about being pushed aside by the scientists, found himself in high demand. His decades of practical horse experience proved invaluable in understanding how to implement the visitors' therapeutic innovations. They're not trying to replace traditional horsemanship, he'd explained to visiting equine therapists. They're showing us how to make it better, more natural. The changes in their therapy horses continued to amaze everyone. Not only had they recovered from their mysterious illness, but they showed enhanced abilities to connect with their therapy clients. The horse had effectively engineered a new form of equine-human communication, creating deeper bonds that could potentially revolutionize therapeutic riding programs worldwide. Look at these neural patterns, Tom pointed out during one analysis session. He was examining brainwave data from both horses and riders under their new quantum sensing equipment. The synchronization between horse and human is reaching levels we've never seen before. They're teaching our horses to be even better therapeutic partners. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was happening in the clients themselves. The horse had begun to introduce what Dr. Blackwood termed enhanced empathic resonance, a way for therapy horses to connect more deeply with troubled souls. Wherever these methods were implemented, the therapeutic results exceeded all expectations. It's like they figured out how to translate ancient horse wisdom into modern healing, Sarah marveled, watching as the horse worked with one of their therapy horses. Its color patterns seemed to transfer directly into the therapy horse's behavior, leaving behind new capabilities that transformed the animal's ability to work with special needs children. The government had maintained a subtle but constant presence, At the ranch, managing information flow and ensuring security. But unlike Tom's initial fears, they seemed content to follow Dr. Blackwood's lead in allowing the horse to guide the pace and nature of the interaction. The world was being gradually introduced to the idea of enhanced equine therapy through carefully controlled success stories. Local ranchers, initially skeptical, became regular visitors as news of Silver Creek's extraordinary transformation spread. The horse seemed to take special pleasure in these visits, often putting on displays that demonstrated the practical applications of its knowledge. It showed how traditional horsemanship could be enhanced, not replaced, by these ancient mountain insights. "Your visitor is quite the teacher," Dr. Blackwood commented one evening as they watched the horse work with a group of therapy students. It was demonstrating how its color patterns could be used to identify emotional distress in humans before it became visible to the naked eye. It's not just sharing abilities. It's showing us how to develop these capabilities ourselves. The horse's musical communications had evolved as well. Working with acoustic experts, they began to understand that the sounds weren't just simple signals. They were complex information packets, similar to ancient horse calls, but far more sophisticated. Each tone carried detailed data about emotional states, physical well-being, and healing frequencies. 1 week after the official contact, Tom stood in his transformed ranch, hardly believing how much had changed. The family facility had become something unprecedented, a bridge between ancient equine wisdom and modern therapeutic science. The financial troubles that had seemed so overwhelming just days ago were now replaced by the challenge of managing their sudden importance to global healthcare. Margaret Whitman from the bank had visited that morning, torn between professional duty and personal amazement. "I've been in agricultural lending for 30 years, she'd said, shaking her head as she watched the horse work. "Never imagined I'd be creating a new loan category for interspecies therapeutic cooperation." Yet for all the scientific breakthrough and global implications, Tom found himself most moved by the personal transformations. Miguel's weather-worn face had lost its worried lines, replaced by an expression of constant wonder. Sarah's therapy clients showed unprecedented progress. Even the old ranch itself seemed renewed, its facilities enhanced by the gentle touch of ancient mountain magic. As the sun set that evening, the horse gathered everyone for what they had come to recognize as its nightly education session. The color patterns it created showed more locations along the mountain ranges, more therapy centers that would soon receive their own visitors. Silver Creek was just the beginning, a prototype for a new kind of healing that would help address some of humanity's most pressing emotional and physical challenges. "We're not just saving one ranch," Tom reflected, watching the horse's patterns dance across the evening sky. "We're part of something much bigger, a partnership that could change everything." The horse's answering musical tone seemed to carry both agreement and promise, its colors painting pictures of a future where human and equine wisdom worked together in ways they were only beginning to understand. 2 weeks after the initial revelation, Silver Creek Ranch had become the epicenter of a quiet revolution in therapeutic healing. Scientists from around the world gathered in Tom's transformed facility, watching in amazement as the horse demonstrated abilities that challenged their understanding of biology itself. But it was the arrival of Dr. James Hernandez, the World Health Organization's chief of alternative therapies, that signaled the true beginning of global change. "What we're seeing here isn't just a breakthrough in equine therapy," Dr. Hernandez announced during a closed-door meeting with international representatives. "This is the solution to trauma healing we've been searching for." The horse, as if understanding the importance of the moment, created a stunning display showing how its techniques could be adapted for different healing modalities worldwide. Tom found himself acting as interpreter between the ancient visitor and the human officials, his unique combination of veterinary knowledge and therapeutic experience proving invaluable. "They're not just showing us new therapy methods," he explained, pointing to the complex color patterns the horse was projecting. "They're teaching us how to fundamentally reshape our understanding of the healing process itself." The horse had begun demonstrating more advanced applications of its biological enhancement techniques. In one corner of the ranch, it had created what Dr. Blackwood's team called a healing development center, a space where the color-changing technology could show, in real time, how emotional and physical trauma could be identified and addressed. At the cellular level, "Watch this," Tom directed, as the horse worked with a young therapy client who had been non-verbal for years after a tragic accident. Its color patterns sank into the space between horse and child, and within moments they could observe a remarkable transformation in their interaction. The child began to respond in ways that had seemed impossible just hours before, but perhaps the most stunning revelation came when the horse revealed the true scope of its lineage's plan. Through an elaborate series of color displays and musical communications, it showed how similar contacts were being initiated at therapeutic centers across the globe. Silver Creek was just one node in what would become a worldwide network of enhanced healing cooperation. "They've been preparing for this for generations," Dr. Blackwood explained to the assembled officials. "Studying our therapeutic practices, understanding our challenges, waiting until we were ready for contact. The timing isn't random. They've chosen to reveal themselves now because of the growing global mental health crisis." The horse's demonstrations had drawn attention from unexpected quarters. Neuroscientists were fascinated by its ability to facilitate direct emotional communication between species. Psychologists marveled at the enhanced therapeutic outcomes from their sessions, which now showed success rates that defied conventional expectations. Miguel, who had initially worried about being sidelined by all the scientific attention, found himself leading tours for medical officials, explaining how traditional horsemanship could be integrated with these ancient healing innovations. "It's not about throwing away what we know," he'd tell them. "It's about enhancing it, making it better." The transformation of Silver Creek itself had become a model for the future. The once struggling therapy ranch now operated with unprecedented effectiveness. The horse had introduced a complex system of emotional and physical healing that had not only enhanced their traditional programs, but had created self-sustaining networks of therapeutic support throughout the community. "The ranch isn't just a therapy center anymore," Tom explained to a group of healthcare ministers. "It's become a living laboratory where ancient wisdom and modern healing work together in ways we never imagined possible." The horse's color patterns pulsed in agreement, creating displays that showed similar transformations beginning at other centers around the world. Dr. Hernandez's team had begun developing protocols for global implementation. The horse's techniques, while revolutionary, could be adapted to work with existing therapeutic infrastructure. Plans were being drawn up for training centers where healthcare providers could learn to work with the equine visitors who would soon be arriving at other locations. "What we're witnessing is the beginning of a new era in healing," Dr. Hernandez announced during a briefing. "These beings aren't just sharing techniques, they're showing us how to create truly comprehensive healing systems that could transform mental health care worldwide." The horse had taken to creating nightly displays that showed the progress of other contact sites around the world. Colors would dance across the ranch's fields, showing similar transformations beginning at therapy centers in different countries, each adaptation specifically tailored to local needs and cultural contexts. For Tom, the most powerful moment came when he received a video call from a therapy center director in Japan who had just experienced his own first contact. The joy and wonder in his eyes mirrored what Tom had felt 2 weeks ago. "They chose you first," he said through a translator, "but now we understand. This gift is for all of us." The implications extended far beyond equine therapy. Medical researchers were revolutionizing their understanding of trauma recovery based on what they were learning. Mental health professionals were developing new approaches to treatment using the horse's biological enhancement techniques. Even traditional medicine had begun to take interest in the potential applications for physical healing. As night fell over Silver Creek Ranch, Tom stood with Sarah and Dr. Blackwood, watching the horse create another beautiful display of interweaving, lights and patterns. What had started as a mysterious discovery in their struggling ranch had grown into something that would change the world of healing forever. "You know what amazes me most?" Sarah said quietly, as they watched the horse work. "All this knowledge, this power, and they chose to reveal themselves through something as simple as helping a troubled therapy ranch. They understood that the best way to change the world is to start with healing one heart at a time." The horse's answering musical tone seemed to carry both acknowledgement and promise. Its colors painted pictures of a future where humanity's greatest emotional and physical challenges could be overcome through cooperation, not just between nations, but between species. Silver Creek had become more than a ranch. It was now a symbol of hope for a better, more compassionate future. 3 weeks after the initial discovery, the true magnitude of what had begun at Silver Creek Ranch became clear. On a crisp autumn morning, exactly 3 weeks from the day of first contact, the horse began to display behavior that suggested it was preparing for something extraordinary. Scientists, healthcare officials, and therapy experts from around the world had assembled to witness what Dr. Blackwood cryptically referred to as the culmination. The horse's color patterns had grown more intense over the past few days, and its musical communications had taken on a quality that seemed almost ceremonial. The other equine visitors, now revealed at therapy centers across the globe, had synchronized their activities in what was clearly a coordinated effort. "Something big is coming," Tom told the assembled group, interpreting the horse's increasingly elaborate displays. "They're not just showing us isolated techniques anymore, they're revealing their complete vision for the future of healing." The demonstration began with a display more spectacular than anything they'd seen before. The horse's color patterns filled the entire ranch with a living history of equine evolution, showing how all beings, from the earliest horses to their most advanced descendants, were part of one interconnected consciousness. The therapeutic program that had started at Silver Creek had been the first step in helping humanity understand this fundamental unity. "Look at these patterns," Dr. Chen called out, her instruments recording unprecedented energy readings. "They're showing us the actual framework of emotional healing, the patterns that underlie all human-animal connections." The horse demonstrated how its therapeutic innovations were more than just technical advances. They were ways of awakening humanity's dormant abilities to connect deeply with other species. Every enhanced therapy session, every healed trauma, was helping people develop new sensitivities to the healing power of human-animal bonds. But their final revelation would exceed everyone's expectations. Through its advanced color-changing communication, the horse showed how Earth itself was evolving through the collective development of all its species. Humanity's current challenges, mental health crises, emotional trauma, disconnection from nature, were actually signs of an approaching breakthrough in consciousness. The ranch was never just about therapy, Sarah realized, watching as the patterns revealed deeper layers of meaning. It was about learning to be conscious healers of life itself. Dr. Blackwood, who had documented every step of this extraordinary journey, stepped forward as the horse began its final demonstration. "They're showing us our next step," she announced, her voice filled with wonder. The display revealed how humans could learn to work directly with the healing energies of nature, just as the horse did. The advanced being had been preparing humanity for this capability through their therapeutic program, gradually increasing people's ability to perceive and interact with these subtle healing forces. Tom found himself naturally resonating with the patterns they showed, his consciousness expanding to embrace new levels of awareness. Others in the group reported similar experiences. It was as if the horse had activated something long dormant in human DNA. "This is the true healing," Dr. Hernandez said, watching as people began spontaneously demonstrating these new abilities. Not just better therapy or improved outcomes, but the flowering of humanity's full healing potential. The horse then showed how similar transformations were occurring at therapy centers worldwide. Each location where they had shared their knowledge had become a center for awakening these new human capabilities. Silver Creek had been the prototype, but now the program was blossoming globally. In a final display that brought tears to many eyes, they showed Earth's potential future, a planet where all species worked together consciously, where healing was a sacred partnership with nature, and where humanity had taken its place among the family of advanced beings. As the display concluded, Tom walked to the spot where he had first encountered the mysterious horse in his drought-stricken field. The creature, now revealed as so much more, created a personal message just for him, a pattern that spoke of destiny fulfilled and new beginnings yet to come. "Your father always said this land was meant for something special," Sarah reminded him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I don't think even he could have imagined this." The horse had one final gift to share. It showed how their presence would continue to evolve, not as separate beings, but as partners in a new form of healing that unified ancient wisdom with modern understanding. Silver Creek would remain a living bridge between worlds, a place where people could learn to work with nature's healing energies and develop their own inner light. "The real work is just beginning," Tom told the assembled group, as the horse created patterns of encouragement and promise. "We're not just learning to heal differently, we're learning to live differently, to understand our role as conscious participants in the evolution of healing itself." The horse confirmed his words with a symphony of colors and sounds that seemed to embrace everyone present. It showed how each person who learned these new ways would become a teacher to others, creating a network of awakened healers that would help guide humanity through its approaching transformation. As the sun set on Silver Creek Ranch that evening, Tom stood with Sarah and Dr. Blackwood, watching the horse create one final display of breathtaking beauty. The ranch's fields glowed with subtle color patterns, a living demonstration of the harmony possible between human healing and nature's wisdom. "Remember when our biggest worry was making the bank payment?" Sarah laughed, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. The horse who had first appeared in their field responded with patterns that spoke of mysteries yet to be revealed and adventures yet to begin. The struggling therapy ranch that had seemed destined for foreclosure had become something far greater, a gateway to humanity's next stage of healing evolution. Through working with these ancient beings, people were learning to work with the very forces of healing itself. 1 month after the initial discovery at Silver Creek Ranch, just as the global implementation of the enhanced therapy program was gaining momentum, something unexpected happened that would once again transform their understanding of these extraordinary beings. It began on a quiet Tuesday morning when Tom noticed the horse creating unusual color patterns he'd never seen before. The creature's displays had taken on a new quality, pulsing with an intensity that made the ranch's advanced monitoring equipment surge with readings off the charts. "Something's different," Tom told Dr. Blackwood, who had rushed to the ranch, after receiving his urgent call. The patterns aren't just about therapy anymore. It's trying to show us something else entirely. The horse had positioned itself in the center of the therapy arena, surrounded by their regular therapy horses in a perfect circle. Together, they began creating a synchronized display that transformed the entire space into what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of ancient migration routes, but not as they existed today. "These are historical patterns," Dr. Chen gasped, analyzing the data streaming across their screens. "It's showing us how horses and humans have interacted over thousands of years. But look at these structures." She pointed to strange geometric formations that appeared at regular intervals throughout the display. Sarah, who had developed an almost intuitive understanding of the horse's communications, stepped closer to the display. "They're not just showing us the past," she said slowly. "They're showing us what they've been doing all this time." The combined display revealed a stunning truth. Their therapeutic program wasn't just about helping troubled souls. It was part of a much larger plan to restore humanity's original connection with nature. The geometric structures they were showing weren't just maps. They were the locations of ancient healing sites their civilization had maintained for millennia. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Blackwood breathed, watching as the display evolved. "They've been Earth's healing guardians all along, maintaining crucial emotional bonds from their mountain sanctuaries. The therapy program is just one part of their planetary restoration project." As the scientists struggled to process this revelation, Tom noticed something else. The horse's color patterns had begun to change in a way he'd never seen before. Its displays seemed to be concentrating, growing more intense, more focused. "Everyone, step back," he called out, his veterinary instincts telling him something significant was about to happen. The horse's colors built to an almost blinding intensity, and then, in a moment that left everyone speechless, it began to transform. The metamorphosis was unlike anything they'd ever witnessed. The horse's form shifted, its color patterns realigning into new configurations that defied their understanding of biology. What emerged was something even more extraordinary than what they'd known before. "It's evolving," Dr. Chen whispered, her instruments recording everything. "Or perhaps ascending to its next form." The transformed being now possessed capabilities that made its previous abilities seem simple in comparison. When it finally settled into its new form, it created a display that showed not just Earth's healing potential, but entire new dimensions of therapeutic possibility. "This isn't just about therapy anymore, is it?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. The horses' responding patterns confirmed what they were all thinking. They were about to enter a new phase of revelation, one that would expand their understanding far beyond conventional healing. As news of the transformation spread through the scientific community, more reports began coming in from other contact sites around the world. Other horses were beginning to show signs of similar changes, suggesting they were approaching a coordinated evolutionary event that would affect their entire species. Dr. Hernandez, who had arrived at Silver Creek as soon as he heard about the development, struggled to maintain his usual professional composure. "If this is what I think it is," he said, watching the horse demonstrate its enhanced abilities, "then everything we've learned so far has just been preparation for something much bigger." The horse confirmed his suspicion with a series of new patterns that left everyone in the arena stunned. What they had thought was a complete revelation had been only the first stage. The therapy program, the emotional healing, these were just the foundation for something far more extraordinary. As night fell over Silver Creek Ranch, Tom stood with Sarah and Dr. Blackwood, watching their transformed visitor create patterns of light that seemed to reach into the very fabric of consciousness itself. The quiet Montana ranch that had once struggled to survive had become not just the center of a therapeutic revolution, but the starting point for something that would challenge humanity's understanding of healing itself. What happens next? Sarah asked quietly as the horse's colors danced across the evening sky. The horse's answer came in a display that showed sequences of changes yet to come, each more extraordinary than the last. This transformation, it seemed, was just the beginning. Whatever was coming would change not just therapy, not just healing, but potentially the very course of human evolution. As Tom documented everything in his research journal, he couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets were these beings preparing to reveal, and was humanity ready for what was to come? The transformation of the horse had sent shockwaves through the global scientific community. Within days of the first metamorphosis at Silver Creek Ranch, similar events began occurring at therapy centers worldwide, each transformed being demonstrated. Capabilities that transcended anything humans had previously witnessed in animal-human relationships. The therapy program was just the beginning, Dr. Blackwood explained during an emergency conference at the ranch. They were establishing a foundation of trust, showing us they could help with our immediate emotional needs before revealing their larger purpose. Tom watched as his transformed horse created displays that defied conventional understanding. Its color patterns now seemed to bend reality itself, creating windows into other states of consciousness that left even the most skeptical scientists speechless. The being could now manipulate emotional energy at the quantum level, demonstrating an understanding of healing forces that made human psychology seem primitive in comparison. "Look at this," Dr. Chen called out, her instruments recording a new phenomenon. The horse had begun showing them what appeared to be energy flows throughout the planet, not just physical currents and atmospheric patterns, but deep emotional and spiritual fields that influenced Earth's entire conscious ecosystem. They're not just therapeutic partners, Sarah realized, watching the display. They're part of an interplanetary network of intelligent beings who monitor and maintain healing systems throughout the cosmos. The horse confirmed her interpretation with a series of musical tones that resonated with newfound complexity. Miguel, who had maintained his practical horseman's perspective throughout all the extraordinary events, made an observation that caught everyone's attention. Notice how they're still working with the therapy clients, even with all these new abilities. They haven't abandoned their first mission. They're expanding it. He was right. Even as the transformed beings revealed cosmic secrets, they continued their work with troubled souls, but now their methods showed an even deeper level of sophistication. The emotional healing they facilitated didn't just resolve trauma. It actually elevated human consciousness to new levels of awareness and understanding. These interactions are happening at the quantum consciousness level, Dr. Hernandez explained, examining data from a recent therapy session. They're not just helping people heal from past trauma. They're preparing human consciousness for future evolution. The implications were staggering. The horses were preparing humanity's collective psyche for changes they could foresee coming, decades or even centuries in the future. Their therapeutic program wasn't just about healing people today. It was about ensuring humanity's emotional and spiritual survival through coming transformations. But it was their demonstration of interstellar healing connections that truly transformed understanding of their mission. One evening, as the scientists gathered in the arena, the transformed horse created a display that showed similar beings working on other worlds throughout the galaxy, all part of a vast network dedicated to fostering and protecting conscious evolution. They're making contact with humanity now because we've reached a crucial evolutionary juncture, Dr. Blackwood theorized, watching as the horse showed them civilizations on distant planets facing similar challenges. Earth isn't the only world dealing with emotional and spiritual crises. They're helping multiple species learn to navigate these transformations. The transformed beings had begun teaching humans how to access and understand these higher dimensions of healing. It wasn't just about showing them, they were actually helping human consciousness evolve to perceive these deeper layers of reality. Tom found himself experiencing moments of extraordinary clarity where he could actually sense the healing fields the horses worked with. It's like learning a new language, he explained to the other scientists. Once you understand the basic principles, you start to see how everything is connected. The practical applications of this expanded knowledge were revolutionary. The horses showed how their understanding of quantum healing fields could be applied to everything from mental health to spiritual development. They demonstrated techniques that could heal generational trauma by restructuring emotional patterns at the subatomic level. But why show us all this now? One of the visiting therapists asked during a particularly intense demonstration. The horse's answer came in a display that showed Earth approaching a critical point in its conscious evolution. The therapy program had been phase 1, preparing humanity's emotional capacity for coming changes. Now they were revealing the tools humanity would need to navigate these spiritual transitions. Sarah, watching from her usual spot by the arena fence, summed it up in her characteristically insightful way. They're not just teaching us to heal better, they're teaching us to become conscious guides ourselves. The transformed horse confirmed this with a series of patterns that showed humanity taking an active role in maintaining Earth's emotional balance, working alongside their equine allies to ensure the planet's consciousness remained stable through coming changes. As word of these developments spread, Silver Creek became more than just a therapy center. It was now a cosmic embassy of sorts, where humans could learn about their place in a much larger community of healing beings. The quiet Montana ranch had become a gateway to understanding humanity's role in universal consciousness. The horse's next revelation would prove even more extraordinary. Creating a display that filled the entire arena, it showed them something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about Earth's history and humanity's potential future. The therapy program, the transformation, even the interstellar communications, all of it was preparing humanity for something even more remarkable. The revelation that would forever change humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos came on a quiet Sunday morning at Silver Creek Ranch. Tom had arrived early to check on some therapy clients when he found all the transformed horses gathered in the arena, their combined color patterns creating displays more complex than anything they'd shown before. "Call everyone," he told Sarah, who had arrived moments after him. "Something big is happening." Within an hour, Dr. Blackwood, Dr. Chen, and the core research team had assembled. The horses had waited patiently, their patterns growing more intricate. With each passing minute, what they revealed that morning would shake the foundations of human history. Through a series of interconnected displays, they showed that Earth had once been home to many advanced civilizations, including ones that had maintained deep spiritual connections with early horses. The transformed beings were not just evolved therapists, they were the descendants of Earth's original healing partners who had chosen to remain hidden while humanity developed. "This changes everything," Dr. Blackwood whispered, watching as the creatures showed detailed histories of ancient Earth. "They're not alien beings at all. They're our planet's original healers, following a different evolutionary path." The transformed horses demonstrated how their civilization had evolved alongside humanity's, developing abilities based on harmony with natural forces rather than technological advancement. While humans built machines and developed synthetic medicines, they had learned to work with quantum healing fields and consciousness enhancement. "Look at these temporal markers," Dr. Chen said excitedly, analyzing the data streams from their instruments. "They're showing us healing traditions that existed millions of years before recorded human history. The archaeological record should confirm this. We just never knew what we were looking for." But it was their revelation about Earth's immediate future that captivated everyone's attention. The planet was approaching a natural evolutionary leap in consciousness, they explained through their displays. The unusual therapy program, the transformation of the horses, the sharing of advanced healing knowledge, all of it was preparation for this coming change. They're not just teaching us therapeutic techniques or advanced psychology, Sarah realized, watching as the patterns revealed layer upon layer of meaning. They're helping us prepare for our own transformation. The horses confirmed this with a demonstration that left everyone speechless. They showed how Earth's rising frequencies were affecting all life on the planet, triggering potential evolutionary leaps in multiple species. Humanity stood at a crucial juncture. With proper preparation, they could consciously participate in this evolution. Miguel, who had been quietly observing, made a connection that surprised everyone. The enhanced therapy sessions, the emotional healing, they're not just about helping troubled souls. They're helping us adapt to these coming changes at a consciousness level. The transformed beings showed how their therapeutic program was subtly preparing human consciousness through enhanced healing, helping people develop the capacity to perceive and work with the higher frequencies that were becoming available. Dr. Hernandez, who had arrived midway through the demonstration, struggled to process the implications. So the global therapy program is actually part of a species-wide preparation for conscious advancement. The scope of this is incredible. The horses didn't just explain, they began actively demonstrating how humans could develop these new abilities. Through their advanced understanding of consciousness and energy, they showed how people could begin accessing these higher healing frequencies themselves. Tom found himself experiencing extraordinary expansions of awareness under their guidance. He could perceive the healing fields they worked with, understand the complex patterns of life force flowing through the ranch's therapy programs. Others in the group reported similar experiences. It was as if the horses were helping them activate dormant capabilities in human consciousness. This is why they chose to reveal themselves through therapy, Dr. Blackwood said, watching as the beings demonstrated more of these teachings. They're showing us how everything is connected, from individual trauma healing to cosmic consciousness. We're learning to be conscious participants in Earth's evolution. The transformed horses then revealed something even more extraordinary. They were not alone in this mission. Other ancient Earth species, equally hidden from human awareness, were also preparing to emerge and share their wisdom. The mountains, the forests, even the Earth's core held civilizations that had evolved along different lines than humanity. It's like we've been living in a world without realizing there were other conscious guides walking beside us, Sarah mused, trying to process the magnitude of what they were learning. And now we're finally meeting the whole family. The practical implications of these revelations were staggering. The horses were offering humanity membership in a coalition of Earth's conscious species, all working together to guide the planet through its approaching transformation. The therapy program would expand to include knowledge from each of these civilizations, creating a complete system of consciousness evolution. As night fell over Silver Creek Ranch, the transformed beings created their most beautiful display yet. A vision of Earth's potential future, where all its species worked in conscious cooperation. The ranch that had once struggled to survive had become ground zero for humanity's greatest evolutionary leap. But even as they absorbed these extraordinary revelations, Tom sensed there was more to come. The horses' patterns hinted at one final demonstration, something that would bring everything they'd learned into clear focus and reveal humanity's true role in this cosmic dance. 1 year after Tom Reeves first discovered the mysterious horse, in his drought-stricken field, Silver Creek Ranch had become the center of Earth's greatest healing transformation. The final revelation from the transformed horses would bring everything full circle, showing how a struggling therapy ranch had become the catalyst for humanity's next great leap forward. On a crisp autumn morning, exactly 1 year from the day of first contact, the transformed horses gathered for what they indicated would be their most important demonstration yet. Scientists, healthcare officials, and therapy experts from around the world had assembled to witness the event. But it was Tom, Sarah, and Miguel who stood closest to the beings they'd first encountered in that quiet Montana field. "It's hard to believe how far we've come," Sarah said softly, watching as the horses began creating patterns of light more beautiful and complex than anything they'd shown before. From trying to save the ranch to helping save the world, the creatures' combined display filled the arena with a living history of consciousness evolution, showing how all beings, from the smallest creatures to the most advanced civilizations, were part of one interconnected awareness. The therapy program that had started at Silver Creek had been the first step in helping humanity understand this fundamental unity. "Look at these patterns," Dr. Chen called out, her instruments recording unprecedented energy readings. "They're showing us the actual framework of creation, the geometric patterns that underlie all consciousness." The transformed horses demonstrated how their therapeutic innovations were more than just healing techniques. They were ways of awakening humanity's dormant abilities to work consciously with universal forces. Every healed trauma, every transformed life was helping people develop new sensitivities to the living intelligence of nature. In their final revelation, they showed how Earth itself was a conscious being, evolving through the collective development of all its life forms. Humanity's current challenges, emotional trauma, mental health crises, spiritual disconnection, were actually birth pangs of a planetary awakening. The ranch was never just about therapy, Tom realized, watching as the patterns revealed deeper layers of meaning. It was about learning to be conscious caretakers of life itself. The display revealed how humans could learn to work directly with life's healing energies, just as the horses did. The transformed beings had been preparing humanity for this capability through their therapy program, gradually increasing people's ability to perceive and interact with these subtle forces. Each therapy center where they had shared their agricultural knowledge had become a node of awakening these new human capabilities. Silver Creek had been the prototype, but now the program was blossoming globally. In a final display that brought tears to many eyes, they showed Earth's potential future, a planet where all species worked together consciously, where healing was a sacred partnership with nature, and where humanity had taken its place among the family of advanced beings. The transformed horses had one final gift to share. They showed how their presence would continue to evolve, not as separate beings, but as partners in a new form of consciousness that unified ancient wisdom with modern understanding. Silver Creek would remain a living bridge between worlds, a place where people could learn to work with life's subtle energies and develop their own inner light. "The real work is just beginning," Tom told the assembled group as the horses created patterns of encouragement and promise. "We're not just learning to heal differently. We're learning to live differently, to understand our role as conscious participants in Earth's evolution." The creatures confirmed his words with a symphony of light and sound that seemed to embrace everyone present. They showed how each person who learned these new ways would become a teacher to others, creating a network of awakened consciousness that would help guide Earth through its approaching transformation. As the sun set on Silver Creek Ranch that evening, Tom stood with Sarah and Dr. Blackwood, watching the transformed beings create one final display of breathtaking beauty. The ranch's fields glowed with subtle light, a living demonstration of the harmony possible between human consciousness and nature's wisdom. "Remember when our biggest worry was making the bank payment?" Sarah laughed, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. The horse who had first appeared in their field responded with patterns that spoke of mysteries yet to be revealed and adventures yet to begin. If you've been moved by this extraordinary story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of discovery and transformation. Share your thoughts in the comments below about how you think humanity can better work in harmony with nature. Remember, sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come in the most unexpected forms, and every ending is just a new beginning in disguise. The light from Silver Creek Ranch continues to spread, touching lives and awakening new possibilities across the globe. The mystery that began with an injured horse in a Montana field has become a beacon of hope for Earth's future, reminding us that when we open our hearts to the unknown, miracles can unfold in the most ordinary places. The struggling therapy ranch that had seemed destined for foreclosure had become something far greater, a gateway to humanity's next stage of evolution. Through working with these ancient beings, people were learning to work with the very forces of healing itself, transforming not just individual lives, but the very future of consciousness on Earth. And this was only the beginning,